surely be one of the most significant debates of my parliamentary career. I have always been a lifelong Republican in terms of Barbados having republic status for the last 25 years or so. I clamored for it. In the late 1990s, when I thought we were moving towards this status, I would have written a treatise on it, which would have been published in one of our daily newspapers. And part of it was quoted, in fact, in a book, Constitutional Reform of the Caribbean, written by the late Professor Simeon McIntosh, who the learned Attorney General just cited and spoke of. Today is a proud day in the history of Barbados, sir. The Honourable Member for St. Joseph spoke about the legal basis of this constitutional amendment bill. I will speak a bit more towards the historical basis of it and the philosophical basis of what we are doing today. Presently, the head of state of Barbados has been settled, sir, by a British Act of Parliament passed in 1701, over 300 years ago, by virtue of which the House of Windsor will rule as royalty over the United Kingdom and consequently, sir, over Barbados. This is not something that we as a nation, independent now for 55 years, ought to be proud of. This day is long in coming. Our transition to republic status, sir, would be the culmination of our country's progression through emancipation, through universal adult suffrage in the early 1950s, Act of 1950, sir, through internal self-government, then the Bush experiment in 1954, and then internal self-government a few years after, through independence, sir, in 1966, naming about 10 national heroes in 1998, and the removal of the British Privy Council as our final court of appeal to a Caribbean Court of Justice in, I think it was 2005. In addition, sir, the removal of Lord Nelson less than a year ago, we can't forget that as well. It's part of our coming together as a nation, sir, as proud people of an independent Barbados, sir. Barbados was never grant aided. We are right now ineligible for concessionary loans from international financial institutions, such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, as a result of the overall standard of living of our people. So England, the United Kingdom, has not given us anything. We stand on our own feet, our own 2 feet, as a people, as we have done for decades, proud members of an international community, equal to everyone, sir, and better in terms of our intellect, in terms of our resilience, in terms of our development than most, sir, including many of the developed countries in the world. We have no special international trade relations as a result of being a monarchy or having the Queen of England as our head of state. That stopped way back in 1994, sir. And even a few years before that, we were moving towards removal of the preferential treatment that we used to have in terms of the UK market and the European market as a consequence for our sugar and our other commodities. So we get no benefit whatsoever from being a monarchy, from being a country that recognizes the Queen of England as its head of state. So there's no economic value in continuing as a monarchy. In fact, sir, As the Honourable Attorney General said, it is something that really and truly ought to have happened in 1966, although I well understand why it couldn't be so. We will remain a member of the British Commonwealth, sir, with the Queen of England as titular head, as all former British colonies are still members of the British Commonwealth, except one or two that from time to time might be expelled. And there are 54 members of the Commonwealth. 30 of those 54 members of the Commonwealth are republics. So more than half of the countries that were British colonies are republics. We are in a minority at the present time. And in fact, most of those 30 countries became republics on independence. That was not so with our fellow Caribbean countries that are now republics. The Republic of Guyana, of course, and that of Dominica, the Commonwealth of Dominica, became republics after their independence, as well as, of course, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. But there are only 15 countries globally that have the British monarchy as their head of state. Most of them are fellow CARICOM countries, represented by a local governor general. Out of the 54 countries in the Commonwealth, British Commonwealth, 7 have their own monarchy, sir. And it is extremely important, sir, that we move towards republic status, that we become a republic, as has been named on the 30th of November this year. It will be an act of self-determination, of political independence, both as a country and as individuals. Anyone, sir, who has examined the role of the British monarchy in slavery cannot seriously and conscientiously be against what we're doing today. I know that my colleague, the Honourable Member for St. Michael East, has on many occasions spoken about this role, both inside and outside of Parliament, the role of the British monarchy in the greatest international crime of the history of this world, the transportation of slaves, black people from Africa to the Caribbean, sir, including Barbados, into slavery as property, as chattel of others, sir, and Barbados being, quote unquote, the perfect slave society, sir, until the abolition of slavery. This is something, sir, that we need to be rid of, that we needed to be rid of long time ago. The monarchy of England used to give letters patents to individuals and to companies, the East India Company and all of those, to transport goods from England to Africa, and then slaves from Africa to the Caribbean. So the British monarchy itself owned slaves and sugar plantations. And the history of the plantation slave society, of which relatives of the monarchy, of, in fact, the first cousin of this present Queen, La Salle's, is well documented in many books by Sir Hilary Beckles, including Britain's Black Death, which I am, in fact, presently reading. And this is part of what it has been to be a monarchy and to have the Queen of England recognized as our head of state. It is something that ought to have been changed decades ago, sir, and quite frankly, it is one of the only challenges that I had with the last Barbados Labour Party administration, that cold feet was obviously entered into, and the then Prime Minister, the late Right Honourable Owen Arthur, didn't go through with the issue. First, by talking about a referendum, which I am extremely happy this government, this cabinet did not agree to go with, because we don't need a referendum for this, sir. This is something that the overwhelming majority of Barbadians, way back in the late 1990s, when we had this Constitutional Reform Commission, better known as the Sir Henry Ford Commission, sir, spoke and presented before it. So I went to quite a few of those meetings here in Barbados, but that commission also would have held town hall meetings in the diaspora, in England, in Canada, in the United States. It would have taken 265 oral and written presentations. And the vast majority of people then, as the vast majority of people now, sir, because we have progressed, agreed that Barbados needed to rid itself of the monarchical system and have its own president, sir. Born Barbadian, sir, or in the case of this constitutional amendment, sir, a Barbadian by descent. And as I said, sir, there is never a wrong time to do the right thing. So those apologists who are talking about this is not the right time and we dealing with economic challenges and a health pandemic, sir, really and truly, sir, ought to be ashamed of themselves. And I quite frankly, sir, I'm ashamed of the Democratic Labour Party and its leadership for the stance they have taken, saying that we are not ready for this and we shouldn't be going into republic status at this time, sir. When the Ford Commission evidence speaks to the fact that on the 17th of November 1997, a meeting was held with the Commission at the Democratic Labour Party auditorium with then members of Parliament, in fact, then leader of the opposition, David Thompson, now the late David Thompson, who, of course, or the late Right Honourable David Thompson, who, of course, went on to become Prime Minister of Barbados, the late Sir Branford Tate, as he became, by the time he died, he was then a Member of Parliament, sir. Joseph Trudeau, who was then a Member of Parliament under the Democratic Labour Party, sir, and Marjorie Lashley, who was a leader of the Democratic Labour Party Women's League. And the Democratic Labour Party at that time, as well, they ought to agreed unconditionally that Barbados should become a republic, sir. That was almost 25 years ago, 24 years ago. And that is in keeping, in fact, with the philosophy of the founder member of the Democratic Labour Party, the Right Excellent Errol Barrow, who said that we should not be satellites of anyone, said that on us becoming independent, sir. And he also said that we should not loiter on colonial steps. And this is something that we have continued to do for 55 years after independence, and which we will no longer do after the 30th of November this year. The British monarchy, sir, is not about who we are in terms of our culture, in terms of our values, in terms of our hopes, in terms of our aspirations as a people. It is an undemocratic, hereditary system of class-structured privilege, sir, and tradition, something that is anti-everything that we, as a government of Barbados and as a people, ought to stand for. Now, sir, the United Kingdom, Great Britain can keep their monarchy, sir, and will never, in my opinion, get rid of it, sir. And any visit to England will show you why. Because you just have to tour all the towers of London and all the palaces, etc., and you see the billions of dollars a year that the British government earns from the monarchy and from royalty and from people visiting these places based on tradition and privilege of a House of Windsor, sir, to understand why England would want to keep the monarchy, sir. But that has nothing to do with Barbados, sir. We have to move and progress as a nation state, and we have to continue to earn self-respect and honor and identity and dignity in this world as we have done, sir, because of the standard of our human resources and the people who we have produced. This change, this transition, sir, to republic status will entail absolutely no alteration to the present relationship of our various arms of government or to our international relations, sir. Our relations with countries will remain the same. Our president will have merely ceremonial powers as the Governor General, as representative of Cream, has right now. And those who seek to create fear in the hearts of people about how, you know, we would become a banana republic and we would have bloodshed. We've had 6 transitions of government from the time we had universal adult suffrage. 6. From the Barbados Labour Party to the Democratic Labour Party, from the Democratic Labour Party to the Barbados Labour Party. Not an inch of blood has been shed, sir, by the people of this country. Life goes on, life continues. I heard someone commenting on a call-in program about how the Prime Minister or the President through the Prime Minister would be able to postpone elections. Elections will continue to be constitutionally due in 2023 as it is right now. Absolutely no change. So this fear-mongering by those who ought to know better is something that, quite frankly, we do not need. And there's some things that an opposition should be able to join together with a government recognizing that in principle it is the best for the country. The last Prime Minister of Barbados under the Democratic Labour Party declared in 2016 that he wanted to take Barbados to republic status. Now, I knew that he wasn't really serious about doing that, even though he might have, and I have no doubt, understood that Barbados needed to go to republic, but he clearly didn't have any intention because we had just come out of 40 hours of debate of the estimates. He didn't mention it then. He mentioned it Sunday after that at the LP branch meeting. And of course, he would have required the agreement of the Barbados then opposition party, our 14 members of parliament at the time, because you need 2/3 majority for this change. And he never wrote any of us asking for support. He never wrote then leader of the opposition, now Honourable Prime Minister, asking for support. So he wasn't serious about that. So about that is the Democratic Party for you. But at least he agreed in principle that Barbados ought to have been a republic and no longer a monarchy of England. We will no longer, sir, have a situation where the Queen of England has to give consent to the Prime Minister's choice or recommendation for Governor General, sir, or where a Governor General has to get the consent of the Queen of England to travel or where to travel, sir. We will not have a situation as we have now where the Honourable Prime Minister has to get consent of the Queen of England for her appointment as ambassador or as high commissioners, or where members of the local council, the Mercy Committee, have to be signed off on by the Queen of England. So we're a sovereign state, sir, and all of this, quite frankly, is a stain on our independence and on our nations. But, sir, it's nothing to do with the individual, sir. There are some who say that Queen Elizabeth II is a good woman, sir, fine woman, and we should wait until she's no longer Queen of England. This is nothing personal against the Queen of England, sir. I've never met her, sir. As far as I know, yes, she may be a fine lady, sir. I mean, if you have all of that wealth and privilege, there's no reason why you should not be a nice person. But the issue is what the monarchy and royalty stands for. And the historical relationship of the monarchy of England to the majority people of Barbados. It is one of shame. It is one which circumscribes the greatest crime of world history, sir. And it is high time that we move to a different status whereby a Barbadian child born today can aspire to be head of state of this country. Sir, finally, I speak about the oath of office, sir, and the changes which will be made in the oath shown to by individuals, by constitutional officials such as the Honourable Prime Minister and, of course, cabinet ministers, judges, members of parliament, sir. This change is extremely important, sir. And I will confess, sir, on 2 occasions, I swore allegiance, as I had to be able to become a member of parliament, to the Queen, her heirs and successors, sir. It stands, sir, on those 2 occasions, in 2013 and in 2018, as perhaps the most hypocritical acts that I have ever done in my life, sir. I always wanted to be a member of parliament, and I really and truly hope that by the time I became one, I would not have had to swear that oath. So I went in there before the Governor General on the first occasion. I think it was late February. It was either late February or early March 2013, and I said I can mumble this thing through, sir. Then, of course, when my colleague opposition MPs had to say this very clearly, sir, I realized I was in real problems, sir, that I had to speak this very clearly, and I did, sir. And it is not something, quite frankly, that I'm proud to have done, sir. I traveled all over the world in my individual capacity, sir, to many international law conferences when I was a member and, in fact, an officer of a committee of the International Bar Association. And you used to meet Africans, for example, and when you speak about constitution, sir, and you tell, and they ask you, well, what kind of constitutional system you have, who is your head of state? And you say, well, we are a monarchy, and invariably they will say, oh, so you have your own king, and you have to tell them that the Queen of England is the Queen of Barbados. So it's not something that you can be proud of, sir. And I give all commendations to the Honourable Prime Minister of this country for taking this bold step and saying that we have had enough foolishness in terms of our constitutional way of being, and that this will end this year, sir, and that we will no longer have the Queen of England as head of state of this country. And as the Honourable Attorney General said, sir, it will not stop one British tourist from coming to Barbados, because again, that was certainly one of the arguments when the last Barbados Labour Party government spoke about moving towards republic status, you had people saying, oh, it will stop British tourists from coming. The 37% of our tourist market that comes from England, sir, will not stop coming because we no longer recognize the Queen. We took down Lord Nelson last year, sir. Well, it hasn't made any difference as to whether any British person wants to come to Barbados. In fact, of course, more British people come to Barbados now than when we were a British colony. So, you know, these kind of arguments by apologists who ought to know better need to be addressed, sir. And the last issue that I will speak about, sir, is the issue of, by some people who say, why November 30th, sir, and how it will remove the legacy of the Right Excellent Errol Barrow, sir. So this government doesn't want to, and in fact, even if it did, sir, cannot remove the legacy of the Right Excellent Errol Barrow, one of our 10 national heroes, sir. In fact, made a national hero under the last Barbados Labour Party government, sir. He will always stand as one of the 3 or 4 most prominent national heroes of this country, together with the Right Excellent Sir Grantley Herbert Adams, sir. I don't think anyone in their right minds could not have those 2 greats as national heroes and at the top of the ladder, sir. Right Excellent Errol Barrow is the only person in the history of Barbados who has a whole day for himself as a public holiday, sir. And this has nothing to do with the removal or any attempt to remove his legacy, sir. This has everything to do with the culmination, long overdue, of Barbados, a sovereign country, as a fully independent nation, sir, responsible for its own affairs, and a people full of self-respect, self-determination, confidence, honor, and dignity, standing as well we ought to among the top countries in the world in terms of socio-economic development, in terms of resilience, in terms of resistance, given the harsh historical background of which we have come out of. I'm deeply obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.